applying that to expanding your brand and omni-channel, which is, of course, a big topic as it always has been, especially in recent developments with tariffs and with Amazon costs and just all these other things that make it a little bit harder to be profitable on Amazon. To reuse a joke from earlier today that I used. With the upcoming of Easter, today is Spy Wednesday, the day in the Catholic faith that Jesus was betrayed by Judas and he agreed to hand him over and all that. We're coming up on Easter, so you want to make sure not all your eggs are in one basket. Funny, haha, comedy. Um,
Ah,
so
yep, mhm.
So we want to make sure that we're expanding and exploring every opportunity that you can, because your competitors are doing it, and if you aren't, you might be missing out on some sales and for a variety of other reasons. So yeah, I'm excited to get into all that with you today. I'd like to go just right into it. Expanding your brand is the name of the game, but that word brand is very unique that it can mean a lot of different things. And I think one of the things that you've said before is that you believe that the brand is going to be the key to a successful expansion. Why? Where is that coming from? Why do you think that is? Can you give me some sort of examples on what you more elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, so people obviously, a lot of folks in our space are selling on Amazon, and there's a reason why people shop on Amazon, or a couple of key reasons. It's cheap, it's convenient, it has, really fast delivery. I could order something now and it would be here by the end of the recording, right?
Right.
And that's great, but it's not the same for all e-commerce platforms. So if every platform differs slightly, then what your product needs isn't just a consistent presence across those different platforms, it's a consistent reputation. And that's essentially what a brand is. It's your reputation across all the different platforms. Like Starbucks is a good example. Starbucks is everywhere, right? There's Starbucks on at airports, college campuses, strip malls, Target lobbies. Every location has a different surrounding, but the experience and the product are the same. And
Right.
so you want your brand to work the same way. No matter where your customer is finding you, they should immediately recognize you and trust what you have to offer. So I think that that's really what it comes down to in terms of brand being this longer term investment and this longer term strategy is knowing that wherever you show up, you're going to be recognized.
Right. And I think that's something that we build very strongly, just with coaching some of the brands that we work with, saying like, when eventually you maybe you're just on Amazon now, but eventually you want to expand and you want it to be very, like you said with Starbucks, you want it to be very unified across all these different places. So we always say use the content that we make across your social media, target all that stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. It's like I said, it's a very unique word brand because it applies to everybody that has one, and everyone's brand is different. So it's just very interesting to see kind of where that's being taken. Again, with a lot of interesting developments in the last couple of weeks here in the e-commerce space.
Yeah, well, and I think, like, it's hard in the face of a lot of economic uncertainty to think about brand being the thing that you should focus on because brand is, again, it's this like, it's just this word that everyone says it's a sticky word, but what does it really mean?
Right.
The thing about a brand is that you have one whether you built it or not. So you do also need to take ownership of it because whether
Yeah.
you built it or not, it exists, it's out there. But when we're talking about a lot of, real financial, economic, real issues that you can put your finger on, it's hard to say like, yeah, but do the brand thing, because it doesn't feel like the same monetized importance, but it is, I think, right now, the reason why brand is such an important strategic focus is because one, again, it's a long-term investment, but two, we know how consumers spend or don't spend money when they are concerned about the economy. So, if you don't have a strong brand, then you're not building that brand trust. And if you're not building brand trust, then we know that customers are not or potential customers aren't going to trust you and therefore they're not going to buy your product. Consumers are more selective when the economy is, uncertain, when the economy feels like it's not something that they can predict. So that's where something like brand loyalty comes into play is, are you able to build a brand which ultimately brand builds trust, which builds consistency, which builds return customers. So, yeah, brand is a little bit fluffy when you just say it out loud, and it seems like kind of a, like, weird thing to say in response to tariffs and economic uncertainty, but brand is what makes you something that your customer goes back to.
A metric that I think I made up. I think I made up at least the acronym for it.
We know
Is
they
I
say
used
85% of metrics are made up.
yeah, right. I call it the CCL when I talk to people that accounts that I audit. It's called the customer confidence level. and it's mostly in relation to how well is your content portraying what your product does, can it solve their problem, all that, the mumbo jumbo there. But I think that really applies here too. And again, in this time of economic uncertainty, you're right. People are. I didn't even think about that in myself, but people are going to be a lot more selective with what brands they're buying and just what they're buying in general. So, yeah, I totally know. I know the importance of a brand, and I like that quote about you have one whether you built it or not. There is a reputation surrounding your products. And it all comes down to are you holding the reins or are you letting the customers hold the reins, kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, very interesting, a very interesting thought. Well, I do want to get into a lot of these different topics surrounding kind of what's going on with this, and how can people still focus on growing and building their brand in this time when maybe they should be more worried about their profitability or their efficiency or where to cut costs. But I think that all kind of, I think the answer, and I want you to give your own answer too, but I think the answer you're going to give is something that all comes back to, well, when you cut those costs, how does that affect your brand? But I'm curious to hear if you have any strategies on navigating these rough seas that we're facing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we all talk about AI all the time, and I think this is an area where AI definitely has its place. What I would say is that AI should be your immediate starting point if you're coming up with a brand from scratch. So it is different depending on, does your brand already exist or are you coming up with a brand from scratch? I have talked about this a lot. On a couple different podcasts, but also with my team, my old teams, like, there are parts of the process that AI can replicate or that AI can take care of, but there are parts of the process that you shouldn't trust to that. So if you're building your brand from scratch, for example, don't skip the foundational work and don't skip the human part of that foundational work. What is human is also what is unique. We know that about AI is that it just, creates based on what is already existing. So if you have a unique story, then don't do yourself the disservice of asking AI to tell it for you because it's not going to tell your unique story. At the same time, you spend that time doing the foundational work, building your mission, building your vision, building your point of difference, all of that, and that is really important to just have documented. But once you have that established brand in terms of, like, content creation and building that consistent reputation and building that consistent brand presence, that's absolutely where you should be leveraging AI, and you should be using that constantly to just continue to get your voice out there and continue to get your brand presence established.
Right.
What I usually say is that the best use case for using AI specifically for creative is to do something as a core element that's really, really like a ton of effort, a ton of work, probably your most human-centered piece, whether that is an ebook or a really long video or something else, and use that as your piece of foundational content and then repurpose that from there because AI is fantastic for repurposing. I wouldn't necessarily
Yeah.
use it for the foundational element, but I would use it for the repurposing element.
Right. It's a great take. That's a great take. It's not something you hear often. I think some people maybe would say, "Oh, I'm just gonna use AI for everything. All of my brand is gonna be AI. I'm just gonna have it build it. I'm maybe gonna have it pick out the name." And I feel like you're right. Until they, it's scary to think about, but until they make an AI that can think on its own and come up with unique stuff, it really is just regurgitating stuff that's already come out. So, yeah, no, very, very, very good take there on this. I'm a little on the side of I'm a little scared to see what AI is gonna be in like
I'm
5,
I'm
10
scared
years.
too. Yeah.